Welcome to the Find Creative Expression podcast, conversations about art and creativity. I'm your host, Sarah Crawford, author, musician, and playwright. You can find the show notes and other information at findcreativeexpression.com. And let's get going. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 6 of the Find Creative Expression podcast. Coming up, I have an interview with Reverend Julie Boniger, who is the creative director of Unity North Atlanta Church. I had a really great time interviewing her, so definitely stick around for that. Things have been good with me. I've been actually writing some of my draft of Until the Night Falls, which is my sequel to my vampire book. And, one thing that's really helped me is taking small steps. So sometimes, I get overwhelmed and I'll be like, oh, well, I don't have, 2 hours to sit down and write. So there's no point. Maybe, I just have 10 minutes. Well, it's like, if you can just do one thing, if you can tell yourself, I'm just going to open this document or I'm just going to pick up my guitar. Usually you will actually end up writing or playing guitar or whatever it is. So that's something that has been helping me. I've been going through a really bad depression episode over the past couple of weeks. It seems to be a lot better now. I'm back to writing. I'm back to being productive outside of my day job. I mean, that's the thing. When you're depressed, you still have to be productive at work. So I'm not going to go on a whole lot longer because I just want to get right into the interview. So let's do that. Hey, everybody. I'm here with Reverend Julie Boniger. Julie Boniger is the creative director of Unity North Atlanta Church, as well as an interfaith minister, a speaker, and a singer. She has directed productions at Unity North, like the Christmas services, the Easter services, and Broadway compilation shows. She participated in musical theater productions as a young adult, as a performer and a choreographer. And she brings her inspirational talks about surviving breast cancer and the journey of awakening to churches and organizations. So welcome, Julie.
Hey, Sarah, welcome. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on episode 6 of the Find Creative Expression podcast.
Yay.
So how did you first start performing? How did you fall in love with it?
Well, when I was little, I loved to sing around the house, and I was quite the ham at home, but outside I was actually extremely shy. And my cousins were involved in a summer theater company that had kids that were school age where they could go in the summer and do a musical. And so when I was 9 years old, my mom enrolled me in that. And that is where sort of the love of theater began. It was Once Upon a Mattress, and it was my first show ever. And, when I got the theater bug, I guess, I found the love through that theater program. And, I did it for several years as a child. And then I went on to choreograph starting the summer after my high school graduation. And so I got to be on the other side of it. It really just helped me to branch out and sort of be able to express myself, and I realized growing up that my mom really, before the law of attraction was a thing, really taught me that I could do anything that I put my mind to. So, for instance, if I was interested in sign language, she signed me up for classes. I got to take classes in how to see auras, and she really kind of helped facilitate that. So when I was 14, I saw the Nutcracker, and I decided I would be a ballerina at 14, having never danced. And so she said at that point, well, ballerinas start when they're very little. And I said, no, yeah, that might be, but I'm going to be the third snowflake on the left next year. And she said, well, honey, I'll pay for dance lessons, but don't have your expectations. So it was the first time I remember kind of feeling that limitation. And yet I just put my mind to it and nothing would sway me. So I got off the bus after school, signed myself up for lessons. And about 10 months later, I was the third snowflake on the left in the production of Nutcracker.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so when you started singing at Unity in 2007, you sang in, the choir and quartets, and you had terrible stage fright. And there's even a video of an early performance where you had to be shoved up to the microphone. So how did you get past your, initial stage fright?
Yes, that video does still exist. So, actually, I didn't always have stage fright. I was kind of the dancer who sang, but when I became like the singer, I developed the stage fright when it came to doing solos. And it really kind of shocked me in the beginning because I had been a performer for so long. But I really loved singing so much that I just really kept saying yes, even though it didn't go well in the beginning. I remember not being able to even get through a rehearsal without feeling like I was going to be sick and my knees shaking. And in that particular video, it was just a quartet. I wasn't even doing a solo. And you would see my minister pushing me towards the microphone, but that inner passion, that inner love of expressing myself just kept me at least trying. And the way I really got over it was just not giving up. And there's a song by Rivera, who is one of my mentors, called Don't Let the Music Die. And she also had terrible stage fright and almost gave up her career. And so I decided to sing that as my first solo. And I'll never forget, I'd already been at Unity and I had that support, but this was my first time really putting myself out there. And it didn't sound great, but people just were standing and just sending love and sending energy. And I realized that it's more important to be expressing your passion. And it was like a shared experience with people who were watching and supporting me, and me expressing that it wasn't a performance. And so eventually, when I realized that, sort of the stage fright dissipated.
That's cool. That's really cool. I mean, it is weird that you would have stage fright, like being a performer, but it's a different kind of, venue, like singing at church versus like being in a musical, it's different.
That's exactly it, because it was the first time I was myself. Being a character, it's a lot easier to sort of take yourself out of it. But, I actually never did karaoke because, and this, it was hard to be myself, and so I could be a character, but to be up there and kind of lay yourself bare as you, I just got in my head about it. And now it's funny because I've been doing it so long and I never get nervous anymore, but it was very debilitating for quite a while, but I just kept saying yes.
That's awesome. So you like to have children involved in performances, whether they're singing or acting. So what do you love most about working with children?
Well, they're the truth bearers, right? And they just express themselves in just such a pure way. And, when I first was in theater, those first 2 years as a child, the first year, I just basically sat on the edge of the stage. All the young kids just basically came out on stage and clapped. And that was great. But the next year, we were doing a show, and when the cast list was put up, I saw that I was Modern Dancer 2. And I literally thought I had won a Tony Award. I mean, it was such a pivotal moment because it was like I got a part and I had I had this thing to do. And really, it was one musical number, and I had a scarf, and I ran across the stage with the scarf. But I just remember feeling this special moment. And so fast forward 10 years, I'm now the choreographer, first year, doing Bye Bye Birdie. And we had 110 children in the production from age 5 to 18. And I wanted them all to feel that, what I felt, that moment. And so I gave a part to every child, 110 parts. And the director, was like, you really don't have to do that. And I thought, but I do. And we know I'm passionate about inner child work. And so things that happen to us when we're children really affect us going into adulthood. And one teacher can have an impact on us, in a positive or a negative way. And so, it's just, I love working with kids, and often at Unity, I love the process more than the actual thing. And I just loved hearing their ideas. And as much as I could, I would have them writing their own stuff. And sometimes I would forget that we actually had to put up a product at the end. But, probably the best story about the power of a teacher and of theater in particular is I was choreographing at an inner city school, Kiss Me Kate, which is not a musical that typically kids would, be drawn to, because it's Shakespeare, and, it's not a fun musical, but the principal wanted us to do that. And there was a particular kid who was just lit up every room, and his name was Randy. And he had the best comic timing. He could sing, he could dance. And so we were really looking at him for one of the leads. And it came time to read for the part. And all of a sudden, he came up and he said, Miss Julie, I changed my mind. I'm not going to audition. I realized that he might have trouble reading. And so, I took a chance, and I said, don't worry about it. I've seen enough. Do you want to be in the show? Because you can go home today. You don't have to worry about, reading the script. And so sure enough, he said, oh, okay. So we put him in the show, and long story short, we worked with him, and it turned out that he had been put through and had a lot of trouble reading. And so he was amazing in the show. And he came to my job about 6 months later in dress blues with a dozen roses and said, I'm now an officer training, and because of you, I would never have been able to do this, but being in that show and taking a chance on me totally changed my life. And, how do you beat that?
Right. It's kind of amazing. Okay. I was in the singing group called the Unitones with you off and on since 2014. So since then,
original member.
Yes, the OG Unitones.
That's right.
So since then, it has gone through several iterations, but you've always used the Unitones as a way to mentor other people, who want to sing, but also had stage fright. So it's always been really important for you to help other performers to shine their light. So what is the most rewarding thing about encouraging other performers?
Well, it's one of those things where they say, don't let your music die in you. And so many people have a song to sing, and to be any part of that, helping someone express that, is such a gift and is inspirational to me. And I think having come from that, I always told you and all the singers, nobody can be more nervous than I was, and I tried to live by example. I wasn't a music director that came in with all these credentials and, couldn't understand. I had kind of been through it all. And I think, again, Faith Rivera, who was just a mentor of mine, I had an opportunity to go to Tampa to a women's conference with her, and she had invited some of her fans to sing backup. And that was one of the first times I realized the power of helping people sing their song, because it ended up being like 4 mother and daughters. And the transformation that we saw in these women transcending their fear and expressing themselves on stage, which a lot of people have that dream and they're just too afraid to do it. And, you
Right.
know, I ended up terming it a musical firewalk, because it's like, why do people pay a lot of money to walk on fire? It doesn't serve humanity, but it's like the power of overcoming something you don't think is possible. And when you can walk on fire, then what else can you do that doesn't seem possible? And so I kind of termed this getting up and singing and getting past your fear a musical firewalk. And, you know, what came out of that, and it was a big venue. So, you know, these women got to perform in front of like 4,000 people, but one left an abusive relationship, one conquered smoking. And it was like they were able to take that power back of expressing themselves and take it into all these other areas of their life. And so getting to watch the singers kind of have those moments is, you know,
Right.
really why I do it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the great things about, you know, creativity and art is that it can, you know, empower you to be, you know, express yourself like in other areas of your life. So, surviving breast cancer has been a part of your story, and you've often said the experience of having cancer really taught you to be present in the moment. So, have you been more present with the creative process since your experience with cancer?
I'm laughing at this question because when I thought about it, you know, that was one of my big lessons with breast cancer is I found myself, you know, in those first weeks after the initial shock, actually happier. And, you know, there was this moment where I was standing at the window looking out at our dog who would kind of leap through the grass. And I just was giggling and giggling. And my mom was like, are you okay? You know, here I'm facing whether or not I'm terminal. And, you know, at that point I hadn't found out how advanced it was and going through all that. And so I had to stop and go, am I crazy? Am I losing it? And what I realized was that at that moment, I only was watching the dog leap through the grass. Or if I was
Right.
with my friend's child, I was only with that child, and not all that outside stuff that just consumes portions of our brain. And, you know, I realized I couldn't think about everything in front of me. So my survival instinct was to just stay with whatever was right in front of me. I laugh about it in this question because as we're speaking, I am doing a Wisdom of Winnie the Pooh event tomorrow night, and I am still creating it. And you have been in many, many things that I've done, and it's no surprise that I work the best at the last minute. And I have tried and tried to not procrastinate, but I think that for me, the inspiration hits when it hits. And whether it's a talk or a Christmas Eve service, it just seems like my creative process. Yes, I'm more in the moment, but those moments need to come sooner. So I'm still honing that. I'm still honing that. But it definitely, you know, the journey with breast cancer has definitely made me take more risks. You know, I think the stage fright actually prepared me more with how to deal with cancer than the other way around. You know, and I love the quote. I have it right here in front of my desk. If you feel anxiety or depression, you are not in the present. You're either anxiously projecting the future or depressed and stuck in the past. The only thing you have any control over is the present moment. And then I have big words, come back. So whenever I lose myself in the past or the future, you know, I just take a breath and try to bring myself back to this moment. And that does help with creativity because ultimately the story is trying to tell itself. And so if I just let it go through me instead of trying to force it, then and it seems to come faster.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the great things, especially about music. Like, you really have to be present with, especially if you're playing an instrument, you have to like really just be present with it, because if you get in your head and you start thinking about everything, like you'll lose where you are in the song or play the wrong chord.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the best. Those are the best moments, right? Where you completely almost lose time, when everything just works, and it's like you're not thinking about anything. It's like time and space kind of opens up, and yeah, those are the best moments.
Right. All right. So you've directed many productions at Unity North, Christmas services, Easter services, and Broadway compilation shows, and many times that has involved a good bit of writing. So, do you think of yourself as a playwright? And would you ever want to write a more traditional play?
Says my playwright friend. So. No, I have not really considered myself a playwright, although, Last Christmas was probably the closest thing to a play. And that was really telling a story of my grandmother. So that was based, sort of on life, art imitating life, or life imitating art.
Life. Yeah, you wrote like entire scenes. I mean, it was a play, it was a short play, but it was a play.
Yeah. It was great. I mean, I loved doing it. Obviously, playwriting is a specific skill, subset skill of writing in general. But even with this current Winnie the Pooh thing, I, took these characters and kind of fed off the classic stories that we know and sort of brought in the spirituality of it. So yeah, I think once my book is written, I could venture off into playwriting, but that's the thing I like about, our spiritual home and what I get to create there is, it does, it definitely lends itself to scene writing, if not playwriting, and how to, weave a story through that. So who knows?
Right. I mean, I could see it. I feel like you just have to like trick yourself into not thinking it's a play. Like, oh, I'm just going to write some scenes,
That's right.
So over the past few years, you've been editing a lot of videos for Unity, which you taught yourself how to do. So what has been your favorite part of video editing?
Yeah, that's certainly not a skill that I thought that I would ever have or need. But as we've seen, 2020 is full of surprises. So when the pandemic came and we had to close our doors and went to streaming, I wanted to find a way to engage people through sort of their screens in a more creative way. And so I thought, okay, how about some videos? And so I started just teaching myself various programs, trying to figure out what I wanted, to focus on. And I think my favorite part is taking whatever message I'm trying to do, whether it's like a promo ad or like one video that I really loved working on was a video about trees, celebrating the power of trees and their communication. And it was for Mother's Day, and it was my Mother Earth section. And so giving people a more complex way of experiencing whatever we're talking about, like if it in relation to our church services. So adding music and transitions and just giving sort of a visceral experience, which I guess brings you back to that whole present moment thing, because there's so many different ways that we experience things. So, you can sit and and listen to a talk that's inspiring, but maybe using a video or music, or, art or whatever gives it a more varied experience that gets you at a different level. So I think I like the creative process of that, what I'm obsessed with is trying to learn how to really get the music and the beats of the music with the visuals. That's like I find myself like, okay, that's my next skill, to really be able to bring that, together. But it's definitely, it's fun.
Yeah, that Mother's Day tree video, like that was awesome. So I think you've, really put a lot of creativity into the videos. And that, that might be one of the kind of positive things about the pandemic, is that it kind of forced us all to be creative in different ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, for the listeners, with the tree video, how it started was that the trees actually sing. And when they have a vibration of the sap bursting, and, trees underneath are connected by all of this, like this whole communication system with the mushrooms, and, they give each other energy. And so when they slow down the sound and the vibrations within the tree, you actually got like an audible sound. And so it sounds like, sort of sounds like drums. But I was just absolutely blown away by it. And so getting to use that as the backdrop and then add in all the visuals and stuff, I think just made it a more robust experience for the people and connected the people that are sitting behind their screens. So you're right. It's forced us to all look at things in a new way.
Yeah. So you got ordained in 2018 and became an interfaith minister. How is your spirituality related to your creativity?
Yeah, I love this question too. So, I mean, really, we're talking about the present moment. And so, I think getting quiet and being present when I'm trying to be creative and forcing it is when our minds get busy, and especially for under a deadline. But I think the power of getting still, but also kind of working through that judgment and those filters from when we were children that say, you're not good enough, you're not a good enough singer, you're not a good enough dancer, you're too short, you're too tall. And, as adults, it can be easy to argue for our limitations. And so, sticking to your vision, I mean, that really comes down to a spiritual thing for me, because that's transcending the human part and the expectations and allowing your divine vision to kind of have its way with you. And, in thinking about the interview, I realized my thing is kind of to create out of the box stuff, right? So Winnie the Pooh and spirituality, for instance, but I've been doing that a lot longer than I realized, because I choreographed cabaret back in my mid-20s, I think. And I remember having this idea at the end of the show, the music, if you're not familiar, the music gets more dissonant, the makeup gets more dark. And so the audience is really having this experience of, the fall of basically, democracy and the Nazis taking over. So at the end, there is this scene and musical interlude where it all kind of comes to a head. So I had this vision where all the dancers were gonna be in black and have these like sheets, ripped sheets, white material, and they'd be dancing around all, in chaos. And then boom, on the beat of music, the black light would come up and it would make the shape of a swastika. And out from the middle of that, the character would come and do their monologue. And then chaos, run around the stage. And then boom, the material would make a Star of David. Well, in the light of day, this looked pretty crazy, because literally we ripped sheets, and all of the dancers, who were also my friends, basically some threatened to walk out and said, this was a small black box theater, and they said, this is embarrassing. It's not going to work. It's not going to have the effect you want. And I really questioned myself, but the director took me aside and said, do you think it's going to work? And I said, I think so. And he said, well, then you got to stick with your vision. And so at the time, I had no idea I would be a minister in the future, but I think I did use even spirituality back then because I kind of had to ask myself, is this the fear that's making me want to change it or their opinions? So I stuck to it. And I was one of the dancers, right? So if it wasn't going to work, I wasn't in the back. I was right out there too. And so
Right.
opening night, the moment comes, the black light comes on, and you just hear the audience go, and someone in the front row goes, a swastika. And so never did I think that that word would become sort of a mantra, but it was like the moment happened, and I ended up getting best choreographer. In our local paper would do an end of the year thing, best play, best this, best that. And I got best choreographer and beat out all the shows at the big theater. So that was probably the first time that I remember thinking it's something outside of you. The vision wants to be birthed. We just have to get out of
Right.
the way and know the difference. So, they
Yeah, I
talk
mean,
about
I love the whole idea of like the muse, and I kind of relate that to connecting with like the divine, or source, or the universe, or whatever, and the muse is kind of a representation of that, I think.
absolutely, absolutely. And again, it's like getting out of our human way and letting that art speak through us. And in theater, they talk about, oh, they have an ego, they have a big ego. But in the spiritual circle, we say ego is edging God out. So it's not about thinking you're better. Sometimes it's about, again, arguing for your limitations. So when and as somebody who's saying with me, my big thing was it's not a performance, not in that venue. We were there
Right.
expressing whatever our connection to source, God, the universe. And when you do that, then it's not karaoke anymore. It's not you, it's not you as you. It's the muse coming through.
So you recently went from being the music director at Unity to the creative director. So what are you most excited about in this new role?
um I'm most excited, well, really, to be doing things that I'm really good at. It's more my happy place, I guess. But probably the biggest thing, I didn't play the piano, or I don't play the piano as well as maybe some music directors. So I really had challenged myself in that role. And I don't regret it at all, because again, it was about progress, not perfection. And it really helped me, step up to the edge. But in the creative director role, because it's a new role, what's exciting is to be able to spend a lot more time on these out of the box trends. And I was raised Catholic, so I love ritual, and I love experience. So bringing experience to church through creative means. But I think one of the most exciting things is sort of being able to see the trends. So being able to kind of track what's working, what are people engaging with, like what are people inspired by. And
Mm-hmm.
this COVID thing isn't really going to go away anytime. Our new normal is going to be here for a while. And we are actually opening up for the first time on Sunday, this coming Sunday, for 50 people. And normally we've had about 300. So we're doing it very safely, but this is the first time in 7 months that we'll have people in the room. But we're still committed to providing an experience through our streaming service, because this is sort of a new way of doing things. And so I'm most excited about just finding new ways to connect and being able to kind of track that and see what is inspiring people. We're heading into Christmas, and so this year's Christmas is going to look very different, and we're creating several different experiences. This year people are going to be alone possibly, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times the holidays are difficult for people. But this will be my first Christmas. I'm grateful to have my mom, but it'll be us just together here, not being able to see family and friends. So we wanted to make sure and give experience to everybody in their whatever situation they're facing. So we're going to have an outside service and the garden, and then we're going to have a Zoom service at 10, and then we're going to have a 30-minute candle lighting service at 11:30. And so people will be able to engage however they are most comfortable, and it's my job to create the ritual and the container for people to not feel alone and for people to feel the sacredness and the holiday. So that's probably the most exciting thing for me, is how to create those experiences.
That's cool. I'm excited about that. I think it'll be cool. So like myself and several of my previous guests, you wear a lot of creative hats. You have been involved in many different types of performances as, a director, a singer, an actress, a playwright, a dancer, and a choreographer. And now you're a minister, speaker, and creative director. So which hat are you more focused on right now?
Wow, when I hear all that, two things come to mind. One is, who is she talking about? And how old am I that I've done all those things? So it's cool to hear that, because I really have done all those things. And so often we don't think of ourselves, when I've been revisiting all this, it's like, wow, I kind of see the evolution. But I love being a minister. I really, really do. And I've had opportunity to do that as well, especially throughout this pandemic. And so I don't know what hat I'm most focused on, but I would say probably ministry, but that can look differently, depending on what I'm doing.
And, and kind of like ministry, it can kind of involve like all the other things.
Right. And again, it's like staying in the moment, like how can I reach through the screen and make this person realize they're not alone. And maybe that's a phone call, or, we have a call on Sunday afternoons, and, that we're at 7 months, and there's about 12 to 15 of us that, and you're one of them, who've been meeting, off and on for this whole time. And so like the level of intimacy, these are people we've seen at church, right? But I know them at a deeper level now than had we been in church. So yeah, I guess minister probably would be my focus, but it can look differently, because I feel like I'm ministering whether I'm singing a song or, creating an experience. But it's about connection. Like that's always been my biggest thing. It is not about the perfect talk or singing the perfect note or the perfect harmony. It's about the person feeling your authenticity and your vulnerability and your expression. And by doing that, they're invited into your space, and then they have their own experience. So,
well, you kind of already touched on this, but what are you working on right now?
Well, I actually had a recent idea that I guess you'll be the first to hear about. As you know, I've been saying I would like to do some YouTube videos, and you have been my biggest supporter in that endeavor. And I have to say, really, when it comes to art, you're really one of my biggest mentors. I just think that you embody the discipline of the discipline of getting it done with the passion of the art. And so I really hold you up as sort of one of my ideals. But you're also a taskmaster, and often say, where's your video? But the idea I had an experience back when the Charlottesville event happened. And, we are in a period now where we are heading into the next month and several months, where our country has been experiencing some division. And so when that happened, I remember thinking, wow, this is the kind of hatred and division that we haven't seen in my lifetime. And shortly after that was the eclipse, which was one of the first totality eclipses. I don't know if that's a word, totality eclipses, but total eclipse of the sun in however many years. And so people were flocking to the line of totality where, it was going to be the darkest. And I remember that Charlottesville was near there. And I just remember having this idea of people, on either sides hating each other one week and then traveling and standing shoulder to shoulder to witness this eclipse and thinking, well, how are both of those things possible? And what is it about the eclipse that's making people forget their division? And it has something to do with the power of the divine, or a divine encounter, the power of awe, something outside ourselves that brings us together. And so it's been sort of rolling around in my brain for a while, but I think I'm going to work on maybe a series about people and their experience of wonder and how that transcends our differences, and possibly getting people who are different together to have an experience of the divine and then kind of see what happens. So that's a lofty goal, but it's
really
one that
cool,
sort of has been, and just to see, people that are on the other side of the aisle or on the other side of race relations, or to just bring them together and see if that shared divine experience or awe-inspired experience can help them see past the division that really is just a construct of our humanity. So other than that, also working on a book and going around and hopefully speaking at organizations and churches and doing my thing.
So what books or TV shows, movies, etc. are you really into right now?
Well, right now, speaking of divine encounters, I am kind of obsessed with space. I go through these phases where I do fangirl out about stuff. So as you know, like llamas have been my jam. I love llamas, and I love, I'll get into something like I saw the musical Titanic, and then I completely was obsessed with the Titanic. And so right now it's space. And I watched a show about Mars, and I just became really fascinated with space. And so I've been soaking all of that up, which kind of, goes to that awe and wonder and how small we are on this little blue marble and what else is out there. And then I'm also obsessed with Jason Silva, and he was sort of the inspiration on my idea for my video or podcast or whatever that turns out to be, of putting people together to experience awe. He does shots of awe, and he's just a very charismatic, so many big words, and just he's got an infectious energy about art and awe and just the sense of novelty and wonder that inspires people. So I watch pretty much everything that I can get my hands on from him. And then what I'm reading right now is a book called The Dandelion Insurrection. And that book was written by Rivera's son, and she is an activist who wrote this book prior to what has been going on with the United States in the last couple of years. And it's a fictionalized, basically telling of what's happening to us. So they say when fear is used to control, love is how we rebel. And so basically it's about the United States in the future where, we've lost our freedoms and there's tyranny and there's fear, and this group of people that decides to kind of bring love back. And then out of that came an actual study guide because she is an activist, of how to put that into practice. So I'm going to start a book discussion and then hopefully have that lead into how we can get boots on the ground over the next several months, no matter who wins this election. I really believe in the shared consciousness and that love will always, always, always win. So, we've got to find a way to come back to love and, get out of the division of our perceived differences and get back to what we all know, which is that we're all the divine expression. And so I'm excited to do that book group and kind of put that into practice.
Cool. That's awesome. Okay, so my next question is kind of a big question, and I ask everyone this, but why do you think art is important?
Mm-hmm. So I did pull up a quote quickly by Jason Silva, and this is specifically about movies, but it launched me into thinking about this question. And he says, movies have these transcendent moments where everything is just right, from the dialogue to the music to the lighting to the narrative context. Everything is just perfect and something magical happens. The film breaks through the screen and does something to you. And, I don't think art is perfect, but the power of art and movies and music, and it does something to you. So the way I think of it as, you have the artist and then the person experiencing it. And I believe it's just a really powerful way to express ourselves and transcend our perceived limitations, and really to communicate what our soul wants to express that words can't contain. So, for instance, through your songs, through the characters in your books, through lyrics, whether it's a painter, right, we can bring life to our dreams that our human ego and the expectation of others and all that stuff may prohibit us. But through our art, we are able to kind of, blur that line. And what I think is so important about it is the artist has the experience of creating it, and the audience has a unique experience interacting with it. And so it's just a really cool, symbiotic way to have our souls talk to one another. And, I think about abstract art. I never really got it, but when I finally did it, it's a very active process. So as the artist doing it, I'm having this experience, and then someone viewing the painting may see something that I never even, right, intended. And so they have that version of it. So I think it just takes us out of ourselves, and helps us either create the version of the world we see or the version of the world that we want to see, and bring each other into our shared experience.
Right. I think it's interesting you said, art isn't perfect, which is true, but I think that's because, as people, nobody's perfect. So it's and to me, sometimes the imperfections and the flaws, are what makes art interesting, someone hitting a wrong note, sometimes that can really be a powerful moment, in the right context.
Like every jazz song. All the dissonance. Well, and that's why I said, the quote from Jason Silva, I love the idea that, we're with movies, it breaks through the screen, but, it's not that everything is just right from what we would say is perfection. It's the idea that it beckons from us what we're supposed to experience. And so, what I love about it is it's really the artist and the audience, for lack of a better word, the audience member or the person experiencing the art are in a relationship and they, you know what I mean? It may not be words, they may never meet, but they've created this shared experience that only they have. So.
Right. So where can people find you and your work?
Mm-hmm. Well, so I'm just finally getting my website up and running. So julieboniger.com. And, I have a blog, and I also officiate services. So weddings, celebrations of life, again, rituals. So house blessings, baby blessings, anything, that wants to be celebrated across the life cycle. And, some of my talks will be up there. So I'm just getting it started, and my videos will be up there as well. So, and then of course, Unity North is where a lot of my stuff is right now. So it's about creating the connection in art through that community, and then, through other avenues as well. So.
Great. Well, thanks again for coming on the podcast. That was great.
Thank you. It was great. I really enjoyed speaking with you, and it's awesome to kind of, put everything together. We don't always think about the body of our work or our journey. And so it's been a cool, powerful experience too, to sort of revisit where I've been and where I am. And
I'm glad I could help you have that experience. I had a great time talking to Julie, and I hope you guys all found it inspiring and uplifting as well. Coming up on the next episode, I'm going to be speaking to author, poet, YouTuber Tamara Woods. She's definitely awesome, so you will want to check that out. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to the Find Creative Expression podcast. Please take a moment to leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. You can find me on Instagram at Sarah E. Crawford or youtube.com/Sarah Crawford. Also find me on Patreon at patreon.com/Sarah Crawford to support the podcast for just $1 a month. And that's Sarah, S-A-R-A, without an H. I hope you've been inspired today, and I'll see you in 2 weeks for the next podcast.